Strength is not loud. It does not announce itself. It is felt when you stop reacting and the room adjusts to you. Picture this. You're sitting across a table. Someone provokes you. A small comment. A test. Everyone expects the flinch, the explanation, the emotional leak. Instead, you don't move. Your face stays still. Your eyes don't chase approval. The air thickens. The other person starts talking. Too much. Too fast. Something inside them cracks. That is not confidence. That is a fortified mind. Most people believe mental strength is positive thinking, motivation, or grit. That is a child's version. Real mental strength is something colder. It is the ability to remain sovereign while pressure is applied, to feel the spike in your chest and not obey it, to see the trap and step around it without drama. Machiavelli understood this. He did not write for men who wanted to feel good. He wrote for men who wanted to endure. He knew that the mind is the first territory conquered. Once someone controls your emotions, your reactions, your need to be understood, you are already governed. Look around. The herd is easy to spot. They talk too much. They explain themselves. They rush to fix tension. They are readable, predictable, manageable. And because of that, they are never feared. They are handled. A strong mind is different. It leaks nothing. It does not beg for validation or relief. It does not trade silence for comfort. It holds its ground internally, and that internal stability sends a signal. Humans feel it before they understand it. This person is not safe to manipulate. By the end of this, you will not have tips. You will have a different operating system. You will know how to build mental walls, not affirmations. How to turn pressure into composure. How to make your presence heavier without raising your voice. This knowledge changes how people treat you, permanently. Once you build a mind like this, you cannot go back to being soft without feeling disgusted by it. Now listen carefully. We are not improving you. We are removing what makes you controllable. The first place your mind collapses is not under catastrophe. It collapses under pressure from other people. A raised eyebrow, a pause, a challenge phrased as a joke. This is where most people lose control. They rush to respond. They explain. They soften. They reveal. That reaction is the entry wound. The game being played here is not conversation. It is frame control. Whoever decides what matters, who is calm, who is reactive, owns the moment. When you rush to fill silence or defend yourself, you accept the other person's frame. You step into their territory. Machiavelli warned about this without using modern language. He understood that men are judged less by what they are and more by how they appear under strain. The mind that panics gives itself away. The mind that stays still forces others to move. Why does this work so reliably? Biology. Human beings are wired to scan for weakness. In ancestral terms, instability meant danger. The person who fidgets, explains, or reacts emotionally signals that they are not in control of themselves. That signal invites pressure. Once pressure works, it escalates. This is why manipulators test early and softly. They are not trying to defeat you. They are checking if you bend. The first rule of building a terrifying mind is this: never let pressure dictate your timing. Speed is submission. Calm delay is dominance. Look at a common scene. Someone questions your decision at work, not aggressively, casually. Are you sure that's the best approach? Most people hear accusation. They rush to justify. They list reasons. They reveal doubt they didn't have 5 seconds ago. A stronger mind does something else. It pauses. Not theatrically, not to perform. It pauses because it does not owe immediacy. Then it answers briefly, or it asks a clarifying question, or it says nothing at all and lets the question sit. That pause shifts the gravity. The person who spoke now feels exposed. They spoke first. They broke silence. They are now waiting. Silence is not empty. Silence is a mirror. This is where the fortress begins, not with words, but with containment. You must train yourself to hold internal pressure without releasing it through speech, movement, or facial noise. Every unearned reaction is a leak. Every leak is leverage handed away. People think mental strength is endurance. It is not. Endurance still reacts. Strength is insulation. The stimulus hits, but it does not pass through. Machiavelli favored rulers who appeared calm even when cornered. Not because calm is moral, but because calm is unreadable. When others cannot read you, they cannot predict you. When they cannot predict you, they fear miscalculation. Fear here is not terror, it is caution. Consider a social setting. Someone tries to embarrass you with a sideways comment. The herd laughs nervously. They expect you to laugh it off or push back. Either response feeds the attempt. One validates the insult, the other escalates it. The fortified response is indifference without performance. No smile, no glare, no explanation. You simply continue as if nothing of value was said. This denies the attacker oxygen. Attention is currency. You do not spend it on tax collectors. This requires internal discipline. Your nervous system will want release. The urge to correct, to defend, to be seen as competent is strong. That urge is the chain. If someone can pull it, they can move you. So you train refusal. Refusal to react does not mean passivity. It means you choose the moment. You decide when, how, and if engagement happens. That decision alone terrifies people who rely on predictable responses. Over time, something changes. Tests decrease, comments soften, pressure moves elsewhere. Not because you fought, but because you became expensive to probe. If you ignore this, the cost is slow erosion. You become managed. People learn how to push you, rush you, provoke you. You stay busy defending instead of building. Your mind becomes a public space. Before tactics, before long games, you must learn to hold the line internally. No rush, no spill, no performance. A mind that does not move on command becomes an obstacle. And obstacles change behavior. Once you stop reacting, a new threat appears: exposure. Silence attracts attention. People start watching you more closely. They try different angles. They probe with questions instead of pressure. This is where most people make their second mistake. They mistake curiosity for safety and start revealing themselves. The mind does not get conquered only through emotion. It gets conquered through information. Every detail you volunteer becomes a handle. Preferences, fears, plans, grievances. People collect these not out of malice, but out of instinct. Information lowers uncertainty. Lower uncertainty increases control. Machiavelli warned princes never to reveal their methods, not because secrecy is noble, but because once people understand how you operate, they stop fearing you and start managing you. The mystery is the mechanism. The strong mind is opaque by design. Look at how most people speak. They narrate their internal world constantly. Why they did something, how they feel about it, what they're planning next. They think they are being honest. In reality, they are publishing blueprints. This is the illusion of authenticity. Modern culture praises openness, but power has never been open. Power is selective. It shows results, not process. Here is the mechanism. When you explain yourself, you place the other person above you in the hierarchy. You assume they are owed clarity. You assume their judgment matters. Even when they didn't ask, your explanation frames them as the auditor and you as the defendant. A fortified mind does the opposite. It speaks in conclusions, not in justifications. Consider a simple exchange. Why did you do it that way? The weak answer is a story. The strong answer is a sentence. Because that was the correct move. And then you stop. The silence after is intentional. It forces the other person to decide whether they are challenging your authority or simply seeking information. Most will retreat. This is not arrogance. It is boundary clarity. People with fragile minds fear being misunderstood. They talk to reduce that fear. People with strong minds accept misunderstanding as the cost of sovereignty. They know that clarity to everyone is impossible and unnecessary. There is another layer here. Emotional disclosure creates invisible contracts. When you share frustrations, insecurities, or doubts, you bind yourself to the listener. Now you have something to protect. Now you must maintain the relationship so the information stays contained. That is not connection. That is leverage reversed. Watch how predators behave in groups. They listen, they nod, they ask questions, they reveal almost nothing. People leave those conversations feeling known, while knowing nothing in return. This asymmetry is not accidental. You must become asymmetrical. This does not mean becoming cold or robotic. It means being deliberate. You can be warm without being porous. You can be present without being transparent. A practical example. At work, colleagues vent about leadership. They invite you in. You feel the pull to bond. You share your own complaints. In that moment, you have handed over a future weapon. That comment will not disappear. It will resurface when incentives shift. The fortified mind listens, acknowledges, and withholds. I hear you. Nothing more. No position taken. No allegiance declared. You leave with your reputation intact and your options open. Machiavelli understood that alliances change. Men are faithful only while it benefits them. To rely on their discretion is madness, so you design yourself to require none. Another common trap is the urge to correct. Someone misrepresents you or your work. You feel compelled to fix the narrative immediately. This often backfires. Overcorrection signals insecurity. It draws attention to the flaw you wanted to erase. A stronger approach is delayed correction or no correction at all, letting outcomes speak. Time is an ally if you are consistent. Panic is an admission. The cost of ignoring this principle is predictability. Once people know what triggers explanation, what prompts defense, what makes you vent, they can pull those levers at will. Your mind becomes an instrument they play. The benefit of opacity is psychological weight. People hesitate. They choose words more carefully. They project strength onto your silence because the human mind hates blanks and fills them with assumptions. Most assumptions are generous. You are learning to keep your inner machinery offstage. What people see is the mask. Calm, brief, unrushed. What they don't see is the engine. And what they can't see, they can't control. There is a final weakness that collapses even disciplined minds. The need to be liked. You can be silent. You can be opaque. But if you still crave approval, people will feel it. And if they feel it, they will use it. Approval is a leash. It does not look like one. It feels like safety, belonging, warmth, but psychologically, it places your center of gravity outside your body. Whoever can grant or withdraw acceptance now has leverage over your behavior. Machiavelli understood this with brutal clarity. He observed that love is unstable because it depends on the feelings of others, and feelings change. Fear, or more precisely, the respect born of consequences, is stable because it resides in expectation, not emotion. This does not mean becoming hated. It means becoming independent of affection. The mind that terrifies people is not cruel. It is unavailable for manipulation. It does not chase. It does not bargain. It does not perform to be included. Look at how approval seeking leaks out. You overextend to be helpful. You soften boundaries to avoid tension. You laugh at things that irritate you. You agree publicly and resent privately. Each of these behaviors teaches others the same lesson. You value harmony more than your own position. Once that lesson is learned, your status is fixed. The strongest shift you can make is internal. You stop measuring interactions by whether you are liked and start measuring them by whether you are respected. Respect is quieter. It does not feel good immediately. It often feels lonely at first. That loneliness is the withdrawal symptom of independence. Consider a simple refusal. Someone asks for your time or effort. It is inconvenient. You say yes anyway to avoid disappointment. In that moment, you trade long-term authority for short-term comfort. The person learns that pressure works. The fortified mind does the opposite. It says no without apology or explanation, not aggressively, calmly. I can't do that. And then it stops. The silence afterward is where the test happens. Many people will push, they will guilt, they will joke, they will question. Each push is an attempt to restore the old hierarchy. If you hold, something shifts. They either adjust or retreat. This is the cost of strength. Some people will leave. They were never attached to you. They were attached to access. Machiavelli warned that a ruler who tries to please everyone ends up pleasing no one and being destroyed by those he tried to satisfy. The same applies at every level of life. You cannot be sovereign and universally liked. The mind must be trained to tolerate disapproval without flinching. This is not natural. Humans are social animals. Rejection once meant death. Your body will react as if danger is present. That reaction is the final chain. You break it by exposure. You deliberately choose small moments to disappoint others. You decline invitations. You disagree calmly. You end conversations without smoothing the edges. Each time you survive, the fear weakens. The leash snaps. As this happens, something else emerges. Consistency. People begin to trust your no more than your yes. They stop negotiating. They stop pushing. They start treating your boundaries as real. This is where fear turns into respect. Another trap is overcompensation through morality. People justify their softness by calling it kindness. True kindness is a choice. If you cannot say no, your yes is worthless. It is compliance disguised as virtue. The fortified mind is capable of kindness because it is capable of withdrawal. It can help without being trapped. It can give without being drained. Watch how strong figures move. They are not busy proving goodness. They are focused on outcomes. Their approval is rare. Their attention is expensive. That scarcity creates gravity. When you remove the need to be liked, your posture changes, your voice slows, your decisions simplify. You stop scanning faces for reactions. You stop adjusting mid-sentence. You stop apologizing for occupying space. People notice before you do. The consequence of ignoring this is stagnation. You become dependable but not powerful, liked but not followed, needed but not respected. You live inside other people's expectations. The consequence of embracing it is internal sovereignty. You are calm under judgment, stable under gossip, unmoved by praise or withdrawal. Your identity no longer floats. This is the core of a terrifying mind. It does not ask permission to exist. Even a disciplined, opaque, approval-independent mind will still fail if it cannot control one thing: internal dialogue. This is where most people are defeated, not by others, but by the noise inside their own head. You already know the moment. Something goes wrong, a loss, an insult, a delay. Externally, you stay composed. Internally, the tribunal begins. Replay, self-accusation. Imagined futures, imagined judgments. The body is calm, but the mind is bleeding. Machiavelli understood that a prince who could not govern himself would never govern others. The internal state is the hidden throne. If it is unstable, everything built on it shakes. The modern mistake is trying to silence thoughts. That never works. The mind does not obey force. It obeys structure. The strong mind does not argue with thoughts. It demotes them. Here is the mechanism. Thoughts feel powerful because you treat them as commands or truths. I failed. They disrespected me. This is going to collapse. Each statement triggers emotion, which triggers action. The loop completes. To break the loop, you change the relationship. A thought becomes data, not a verdict. Instead of, I failed, the internal voice becomes, failure detected. Cold, descriptive, almost mechanical. This linguistic shift matters. It creates distance. Distance restores choice. Machiavelli spoke of fortuna, the chaos of circumstance, and virtù, the capacity to respond. You cannot control fortune. You can control interpretation. Most men let fortune narrate their identity. Strong minds do not. They treat events like weather, not personal, not moral, just conditions. This does not mean emotional suppression. Suppression leaks. It erupts later. Control means containment. You allow the emotion to exist without letting it steer. Consider anger. Anger is not weakness. Unchanneled anger is. Anger is energy, high voltage energy. The weak discharge it immediately through words, posture, or revenge. The strong store it. Stored anger sharpens focus. It hardens resolve. It fuels discipline, but only if it is not allowed to speak. The same applies to fear. Fear is not a stop sign. It is a signal that something matters. The herd interprets fear as retreat. The strategist interprets fear as a prompt for precision. This internal alchemy is what terrifies people. They provoke you expecting an explosion or collapse. They get neither. The energy disappears into the fortress and returns later as action. You must build procedures for this. When something triggers you, do not respond immediately, internally or externally. Insert a pause. Name the state. I am angry. I am threatened. I am impatient. Naming is not indulgence. It is classification. Once classified, it loses power. Then ask one question: what action improves my position long term? Not what feels fair, not what feels satisfying, what improves position. This question cuts through emotion like a blade. Most reactions fail this test. Confrontations, explanations, and venting usually worsen position. Silence, delay, and preparation usually improve it. This is Machiavellian not because it is cruel, but because it is effective. The internal dialogue of weak minds is moral. I shouldn't feel this. They shouldn't do that. This isn't fair. These statements are useless. Reality does not negotiate. The internal dialogue of strong minds is strategic. What leverage exists? What cost can be set? What should be ignored? Ignoring is a weapon. Not everything deserves attention. Attention inflates importance. When you starve a stimulus, it shrinks. People with fragile minds are hyper-reactive because they believe every thought deserves a response. People with fortified minds are selective. They choose which internal voices are promoted to action. Over time, this creates an external effect. You appear unshakable, calm under insult, focused under chaos, slow to react but decisive when you move. Others feel this as intimidation, not because you threaten them, but because they cannot move you with noise. Their usual tools fail. You can be silent, but internally frantic, opaque, but internally chaotic, independent, but internally brittle. That brittleness eventually shows. The goal is not emotional numbness, it is emotional command. You do not kill the inner voices, you put them under rule. And a mind that rules itself becomes ungovernable. A strong mind is useless without one final component: direction. Without direction, discipline turns into rigidity. Silence turns into withdrawal. Independence turns into isolation. The mind must be aimed. Machiavelli judged men not by their intentions, but by their outcomes. He knew that strength without purpose becomes waste, and waste invites decay. A terrifying mind is not just controlled. It is oriented toward a long game. Most people live tactically. They respond to the day, the message, the mood. Their mind is busy, but not strategic. They confuse motion with progress. This keeps them exhausted and predictable. The fortified mind operates on a different time scale. It asks, what am I building, and what threatens it? That question alone filters behavior. Arguments that don't matter are ignored. Opportunities that dilute focus are declined. People who consume energy without return are slowly removed. This is not cruelty, it is architecture. Imagine your mind as a citadel. Every thought, habit, and relationship is either reinforcing the walls or eroding them. Most people leave the gates open and wonder why they feel invaded. Direction closes gates automatically. When you are oriented toward a long-term objective, distractions lose power. Provocations feel small. Praise feels irrelevant. You stop oscillating emotionally because your identity is anchored to a trajectory, not to reactions. This is why aim creates calm. Machiavelli advised princes to think in generations, not in moments. He understood that short-term appeasement weakens future position. The same applies internally. You must be willing to endure temporary discomfort to secure long-term control. A clear example: someone disrespects you publicly. The tactical mind reacts. It confronts or explains. It seeks immediate emotional relief. The strategic mind asks a colder question: does responding now increase or decrease my authority over time? Often, the answer is to do nothing, or to wait, or to respond later, in private, with consequences rather than emotion. The herd mistakes this for weakness. They are wrong. It is patience. Direction also dictates sacrifice. You cannot build a strong mind while consuming everything available. Comfort, distraction, constant stimulation. These fragment attention. A fragmented mind cannot be feared. It is too scattered to be dangerous. So you reduce inputs. You limit what enters your eyes, ears, and schedule. Not because you are ascetic, but because attention is fuel. Whatever you feed it grows. Feed it noise, and you grow noise. Feed it focus, and you grow force. This is where isolation becomes a tool, not a symptom. Periods of deliberate withdrawal sharpen direction. They allow recalibration. You stop absorbing other people's urgency and return to your own priorities. Machiavelli spent years in political exile. That isolation produced clarity. He wrote because he could finally see. Noise had been removed. You do not need exile. You need boundaries. The terrifying effect of a directed mind is inevitability. People sense when someone is moving towards something steadily, not rushing, not boasting, just advancing. That steadiness unsettles them because it cannot be distracted easily. They try, they tempt, they provoke. When nothing works, they either follow or step aside. This is power without display. If you lack direction, others will supply it. Their goals become your emergencies. Their timelines become your stress. Their chaos becomes your problem. That is not life. That is conscription. Direction also protects you from ego. Without a long game, small wins inflate you. Praise seduces you. You start performing instead of building. A long game keeps you sober. It reminds you that visibility is not progress, and applause is not security. You learn to work quietly. Quiet work compounds. Loud work attracts interference. The consequence of ignoring direction is stagnation, masked as activity. You feel busy, but nothing accumulates. You feel strong, but nothing advances. The consequence of embracing it is gravity. Your presence gains weight because it is backed by motion, not frantic motion, consistent motion. At this point, the mind is no longer just defended, it is weaponized. Silent, oriented, controlled, advancing, and people feel that they are standing in the path of something that will not stop for them. The final test of a strong mind is exposure to power. Not your power, other people's. Most minds break not when they are weak, but when they get close to influence, authority, or advantage. Proximity to power distorts judgment. It awakens hunger, impatience, and overreach. This is where even disciplined men sabotage themselves. Machiavelli warned repeatedly about this trap. He observed that men lose themselves when fortune smiles. Success makes them careless. It convinces them the rules have changed. They have not. When people sense that you are stable, opaque, and directed, doors open, access increases, information flows. You are invited closer to decisions. This is the moment that demands the highest restraint. The weak mind rushes. It asserts. It reveals ambition too early. It tries to claim territory before it understands the terrain. The strong mind slows down. Power is never taken safely by speed. It is accumulated through patience. Look at how people behave when they feel upward momentum. They talk more. They hint at plans. They signal superiority. They seek recognition. Each of these behaviors creates enemies before protection exists. Machiavelli advised princes to appear modest when rising and decisive only when secured. Visibility before insulation invites attack, so the fortified mind practices concealment even when successful. This is difficult because success triggers ego. Ego wants witnesses. Ego wants validation. Ego wants the story told. But storytelling is leakage. When you explain how you achieved something, you teach others how to counter it. When you display competence, you trigger envy. Envy is not loud, it is patient. It waits. The strong mind starves envy by remaining boring. How did you manage that? Becomes a mix of timing and work. Nothing more. No details. No narrative. The mechanism stays hidden. This is not humility. It is defense. Another danger near power is moral drift. You begin justifying actions because they work. You confuse effectiveness with invincibility. This creates recklessness. Recklessness destroys reputations faster than failure. Machiavelli was precise here. He warned against being hated. Fear and respect protect. Hatred mobilizes coalitions. You can be firm without being cruel. You can be decisive without being arbitrary. The strong mind understands reputation, economics. Every action has a cost in perception. Some costs are worth paying. Many are not. Emotional outbursts, public humiliation of others, unnecessary displays of dominance, all cost more than they return. The weak think dominance is loud. The strong know dominance is consistency. Another test appears when others defer to you. They ask your opinion. They wait for your reaction. They mirror your posture. This can intoxicate. You feel central, important. This is where you must decentralize yourself internally. Do not become the emotional center of the room. Leaders who absorb everything burn out or become volatile. Instead, you remain a fixed point, calm, predictable in standards, unpredictable in tactics. Machiavelli admired rulers who delegated execution while retaining control of direction. Internally, this means you do not entangle your identity with every outcome. You oversee, you do not cling. This detachment is misread as coldness by those who rely on emotional chaos. That misreading is protective. There is also the temptation to settle. Once power stabilizes, the mind relaxes, discipline erodes, vigilance dulls, comfort grows. This is decay. The strong mind never stops scanning for erosion, not obsessively, but routinely. Habits drift, standards slip, small concessions accumulate. You correct early and quietly. This is why fear of loss keeps power sharp. Machiavelli wrote that fortune favors the prepared. Preparation is not anxiety, it is maintenance. You will expose too much, move too fast, trust too easily, and signal too loudly. What built you will be dismantled. If you internalize it, your mind gains a final quality, gravity without intoxication. You are close to power, but not dependent on it. You have influence, but not hunger. You move carefully, not timidly. And that restraint is what makes people uneasy, because they sense you could act, but you don't need to. And that is the most dangerous position of all. At the end of all discipline, silence, and control, there is one final enemy, your past self. Most people believe strength is additive, that you become stronger by piling habits, rules, and techniques on top of who you already are. This is wrong. Strength is subtractive. You become dangerous by removing what weakens you. Machiavelli understood this instinctively. He warned that men carry old identities like dead weight. Habits formed in weakness continue to govern behavior long after circumstances change. If you do not kill the version of you that needed approval, chaos, or reassurance, it will resurface when pressure is high. The mind you are building cannot coexist with the old one. One will dominate. The most common relapse happens in moments of fatigue or emotional exposure. You slip into over-explaining. You chase understanding. You seek comfort. Afterwards, you feel a quiet contempt for yourself. That contempt is not shame. It is your stronger mind rejecting regression. You must learn to respect it. There is a discipline in catching yourself mid-reversion, noticing the urge to justify, the impulse to vent, the craving to be seen as good, reasonable, or misunderstood. These urges are not random. They belong to an earlier survival strategy. That strategy kept you alive once. It will now keep you small. The fortified mind does not negotiate with the past self. It replaces it through repetition. Every time you choose restraint over release, you weaken the old pattern. Every time you hold silence instead of seeking relief, the new identity hardens. This is not a transformation you announce. Announcements feed the old self. It wants witnesses. It wants validation for becoming better. The new mind does not need applause. It needs consistency. Machiavelli wrote that men are more offended by the loss of habits than by the loss of fortune. Habits feel like identity. Breaking them feels like death. That is accurate. There will be moments where you feel hollow, detached, less expressive. This is not emptiness. It is the absence of noise you once confused for personality. The void feels strange before it feels powerful. Do not rush to fill it. In that void, a new posture forms. One that does not flinch at judgment. One that does not seek to be understood. One that does not react to every stimulus. Others will notice the change before you articulate it. They will say you are different, colder, harder to read, less available. They are right. This is not a loss. It is a boundary made visible. Some relationships will deteriorate. They were built on access to your reactions. When access disappears, the bond collapses. This is not betrayal. It is exposure. Other relationships will strengthen. Those based on mutual respect survive distance and silence. They do not require constant emotional exchange. Machiavelli warned that reformers are hated by those who benefited from the old order and lukewarmly supported by those who might benefit from the new. Expect resistance. Expect misinterpretation. Do not correct it. Correction is a plea. The strong mind lets reality educate others over time. There is also a final internal trap: pride, feeling superior for being disciplined, silent, controlled. This is ego in a new costume. It is just as dangerous. The mind that terrifies people is not contemptuous. Contempt leaks. It provokes unnecessary conflict. The goal is not to dominate emotionally. It is to remain sovereign. Sovereignty is quiet. You do not need to win every exchange. You do not need to be right publicly. You do not need to be admired. You need your inner structure intact. When that structure holds, everything else becomes negotiable. If you abandon this final step, the old self will resurface under stress and undo years of discipline in minutes. One emotional outburst can collapse a reputation built over a decade. If you embrace it, the transformation completes. Your behavior aligns without effort. Silence feels natural. Boundaries feel clean. Reactions feel optional. At this point, the mind stops feeling like armor and starts feeling like terrain. Others step carefully, not because you threaten them, but because nothing in you moves unless you decide it should. When the mind is strong, people change their behavior around you before you change yours. This is the final confirmation. Not applause, not praise, adjustment. Conversations shorten, challenges soften, requests become polite, silence stretches without discomfort. You notice that people think before speaking to you now. They choose words carefully. They hesitate. This is not charisma. It is consequence awareness. Humans are constantly running cost-benefit calculations, mostly unconsciously. When your mind was reactive, expressive, eager, the cost of pressing you was low. They could provoke, rush, guilt, or interrupt you with minimal risk. Now the calculus has changed. They sense that pressing you yields nothing predictable, no emotional payoff, no leakage, no control. That uncertainty raises cost. High cost discourages attempts. Machiavelli understood that power does not require constant action. It requires the credible potential for action, the perception that pushing further would not end well for the one pushing. This perception does not come from threats. It comes from pattern. You have become consistent in restraint, calm under pressure, unmoved by noise, willing to disengage, willing to walk away. These patterns teach faster than words ever could. At this stage, a new temptation appears. Performance. You may feel the urge to lean into the reputation, to appear colder, sharper, more intimidating than necessary. This is a mistake. Performance reveals insecurity. It turns gravity into theater. The strong mind lets others do the projecting. If someone finds you intimidating, let them. If someone thinks you are distant, let them. Correction weakens the effect. Explanation collapses it. Remember, fear here is not panic. It is respect born of unpredictability and self-control. The moment you try to manufacture it, it evaporates. There is also a danger of isolation if you misapply this. Strength is not withdrawal from all contact. It is selective engagement. You choose where your attention goes. You choose who has access. Total withdrawal breeds stagnation. Strategic absence builds value. Machiavelli warned against being inaccessible to allies while being feared by enemies. A prince isolated from support becomes fragile. The same applies internally. You must allow a small inner circle where speech is honest and unguarded. That circle must be earned. Outside it, you remain composed and economical. Inside it, you recalibrate, test ideas, and release pressure. This prevents rigidity. A mind that never vents anywhere eventually cracks. Strength requires pressure valves. The terrifying mind is not emotionless. It is regulated. It does not spill publicly. It processes privately. This distinction preserves authority without destroying humanity. Another shift occurs here. You stop chasing certainty. Weak minds crave closure. They want answers, guarantees, clarity. Strong minds tolerate ambiguity. They understand that many outcomes remain unresolved until acted upon. This tolerance is rare. It unsettles people who need immediate definition. They ask, "What do you think? Where do you stand? What's your plan?" You answer partially or not at all. Not to be evasive, but because premature clarity limits options. Commitment too early is exposure. Machiavelli favored flexibility over rigidity. A prince who locked himself into one posture became predictable. Predictability invites exploitation. Your mind now remains flexible without being unstable. The final outcome of all this is internal quiet, not emptiness. Quiet. Decisions feel cleaner. Reactions feel slower. You stop narrating your life internally. You act, observe, adjust. This quiet is deeply unsettling to people who live in constant internal noise. They project depth, coldness, even menace onto you. In truth, you are simply no longer leaking energy. If you abandon this quiet and return to noise, the contrast will be painful. You will feel exposed, loud, weak. Once built, this mind does not tolerate regression. This is why the knowledge is irreversible. You cannot unsee the mechanics. You cannot unknow how control feels. You cannot return to being readable without discomfort. The world responds to this version of you differently, not with celebration, with caution. That caution is the signal. You have become someone whose reactions are not free, whose attention is not cheap, whose inner world is not accessible on demand, and that makes people slow down around you. In a world addicted to speed, slowing others down is power. What you have built is not confidence. It is not discipline. It is not even toughness. It is sovereignty. You no longer leak when pressured. You no longer explain to be safe. You no longer chase approval or react for relief. Your mind holds its shape under stress. That is what people feel when they say you've changed. They are not sensing coldness. They are sensing independence. This is why the shift is permanent. Once you experience internal command, going back to emotional dependence feels humiliating. You cannot unknow the cost of overreacting. You cannot forget how silence moves rooms. But there is a final warning. Ego will try to claim this as an identity. It will whisper that you are above others, that you see more, that you are untouchable. This is the fastest way to decay. The moment you stop observing yourself, you become predictable again. Machiavelli never trusted men who believed their own myths. He knew fortune punishes arrogance and rewards preparation. A strong mind is maintained, not possessed. You must continue to guard it. Guard it from noise, from overexposure, from unnecessary conflict, from the temptation to prove anything. The strongest posture is stillness with intent. Use this mind to build, to protect, to choose deliberately, not to dominate, but to remain ungovernable. Most people will never reach this state. They prefer comfort to command, reaction to responsibility. That is not your concern anymore. If this knowledge sharpens something in you, subscribe. Understand this was the surface layer. There are aspects of power, influence, and psychological defense that cannot be discussed publicly without dilution or interference. But whether you go deeper or not, remember this: a mind that rules itself does not need to threaten, it is felt. And the world adjusts accordingly.